Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. We haven't done a question and answer for a while, so I figured let's do that. And I've got some questions that were posed to me from Reddit and also certainly from Astral Club. One was from Austin Powers, and he asked, would you make a video about the other planes of existence that you've encountered, like the mental, causal, etc.? I would love nothing better than to do that. However, I believe that it is virtually impossible to describe planes above the astral. And let me explain why. These are very alien planes. I visited the mental a few times. And essentially, what you have to do is your physical body is already parked, your astral body's traveling. You have to park your astral body before you can move on to the mental plane. The problem here is that English is useless. I believe any current human language is useless. It is not up to the task of describing a plane as alien as the mental plane. Let me give you an example of my best attempt to try to describe this plane of existence to you. First of all, there's no frames of reference. There's no points of reference. Time is meaningless. You are a non-localized phenomena. You're everywhere and nowhere all at once. After a few minutes, I could feel my ego slipping away, and everything that was Rick was just disappearing. You think a thought, but you're not sure whether that thought originated from you or you from the thought. You see? It's a damn mess. And this is the more easily understandable of the descriptions that I might try to attempt to describe the mental plane. So no, I won't be making any videos anytime soon about those planes. At least not until we get to the point here in Astral Club where we're all able to communicate telepathically. Because then at least I think I'd have a shot at being able to describe the planes above the astral. The next question is from an anonymous Redditor. There was actually two different individuals who asked very similar questions. They're humans like the rest of us. They struggle with anger issues. They struggle with other imperfections, and they wonder, am I advanced enough to astral project? Well, my answer is, remember how I like to talk about as above, so below? I had a friend when I was a kid, and he told me a story about when he was in fourth grade, and he had transferred out of his school district to I believe it was a private school, and it was a very progressive school. And in this school, they allowed you to select the class that you were going to be a part of. So he sampled all the different classes, and at first, I guess he wanted to be a little lazy, and so he checked himself into the equivalent of the third grade class, figuring that he could be the smart kid. And it was true. For that week or so, he was the smart kid. He was also the bored kid because all this information had been absorbed by him previously. He just there was nothing new. It was boring. He didn't belong there. So then he decided to try out. It was either the fifth or the sixth grades. And he was out of his depth. He did not belong there. It was over his head. And he realized that the fourth grade class there was where he felt he belonged. It was interesting, it was challenging, but it was just where he needed to be. It was just where he knew he belonged. If you're interested in astral projection, if you're listening to this video, if you have read astral projection books, if you've watched all of the videos here and elsewhere, if you are interested in astral projecting, then I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that you are advanced enough to astral project. Because if you weren't, you would not be this interested in the topic. You would not feel like you belonged as an Astral Club member. So yes, you are advanced enough to astral project. The next question was private messaged me on Reddit, and it involved the use of drugs like marijuana, for instance. And this particular person uses marijuana every day, but he's worried. Is this stopping me from astral projecting? He's heard other people online say that marijuana helped them astral project. He's also heard that marijuana has interfered with or blocked the astral projection of others. So, what's the answer? Well, first of all, your mileage may vary when you're dealing with astral projection techniques, and we're all different. I believe probably both groups are accurate. One thing I do know, and as you know, I don't have direct experience of using marijuana and astral projecting, so I can only describe to you what I believe is necessary here. Mental clarity is necessary to astral project and then recall and benefit from the experience when you return to your physical body. If you do not have this mental clarity, then you might project, but you won't remember it. You won't be able to recall it. You won't be able to benefit from it when you return. What are some of the symptoms of mental clarity? Well, when you wake up in the morning, you recall at least some of your dreams. You have lucid dreams and you remember them. If you can do this, you are fine. If you wake up after using various substances and it's a blank slate, you don't recall anything from your unconscious dream environment, that could be a problem. And you might want to experiment with leaving those substances off for a period of time to see if it helps you to project. Now, one outline suggestion that I made to this individual is stop smoking for a period of time and then put your supply somewhere away from your bedroom and tell yourself as you fall asleep at night that if your astral body leaves and goes to that kitchen or wherever you have your supply, that then you'll be able to smoke. I know that in the past I have fasted, I have denied myself water for a period of time, and when I put a substance of food or water in the kitchen, I would often find myself astral projecting as a way of getting at those substances. So perhaps that might be worth a try. At any rate, I would say some experimentation is probably necessary here to determine how these substances will affect you individually as you attempt to astral project. The next questions, all of them come from Astral Club members, brothers, and sisters. Apple Toaster says, Rick, thank you for this channel. I have been reading Monroe's book for a week now, and I have some questions regarding his experiences and yours, if you don't mind answering. Have you ever been helped by helpers? Do you believe one needs to orient the body with the magnetic pull in order to project easier? Does that make sense? Do you need to be completely still to get to the vibration state? I have tended to astral project on my own since I was a child. Now, naturally, in all of those years and many experiences, I have interacted and I have established allies on the astral plane that I talk to or I call upon for assistance from time to time. However, I'm generally pretty self-sufficient. That's just my personality. The polarity issue, I've experimented with this over the years. Nowadays, I just ignore it. It doesn't really affect it one way or another as far as I'm concerned. However, if you want to experiment with placing your head facing north or any other direction, see if it helps. Check it out. It doesn't make a difference to me, I can tell you that much. As far as the vibrations are concerned, yes, it's necessary for your physical body to be absolutely still to enter the vibrational rate. If you move your physical body, you will find that the vibrations will quickly tailor down and cease. Gavin asks a question about astral time travel. He says, when you astral time travel, how would you start the process? Is it just as simple as willing yourself to the future, or is it something else entirely? I know it sounds simple, But your intention and will, well, remember I always put will in caps, must be laser focused, and you must generate a surge of energy that you gather from the astral plane around you to propel you through to your intended target. Expect a period of unconsciousness, and before you find yourself in your new time zone, you will experience that period of unconsciousness. Now, telepathy would be an ideal way for me to communicate better instructions to you about how to do this. Unfortunately, once again, we are handicapped in that there's no currently efficient way for us to telepathically communicate. We'll work on that. All I can do right now is just tell you this experience and tell you what I've done in the past, and hopefully you can experiment yourself and find a way to make it happen. Emperor Yoshi said he said my mate tried out your time travel method and it worked. He said he blacks out like yourself and he goes quite far in the past or the future. He said he time traveled to see the creation of the solar system, and he was there for about 4 minutes. And then he knew it was time to return to his body. He also went about 150 years in the future and saw that it looked very pristine and there was a lot of solar energy being used. I think that's great. I'd love to read that perhaps I help somebody learn how to astral time travel. I've never been back to see the solar system created. What I said to Emperor Yoshi is if he can get his friend to write what he saw in those 4 minutes, and by the way, 4 minutes is great. If you can go back 4 billion years or so and get 4 minutes there, you're doing pretty well. Because remember, the further you go back in the past, generally, the less time you have to spend there. As you go forward in the future, generally, you have more time that you can spend in explorations. So we'll see if Emperor Yoshi's friend can give us a write-up, and if so, we'll talk about that in the future. Next question is from Astral Club member Heidi Thieker. She said, hello, Rick. I'm having some small victories recently, and I'm feeling the vibrations on a regular basis, and I've settled into the rolling out method because it works for me. However, I have a persistent and very frustrating problem. I'm nearly always blind. And she wants to know what she can do about this. I said, Heidi, blindness or weak eyesight, it's a common problem in the early stages of astral projections. I experience it about a third of the time sometimes. What I usually do is I'll feel my way or just, run through a wall somewhere while I'm blind or whether my sight is very weak. And as soon as you get about 10 yards or meters from your physical body, you then have to will, all caps, your eyesight to return. And it may return all at once. It may start fading in, but it's interesting. It always reminds me of that one scene in The Matrix where Keanu Reeves is on the operating table and he talks about his sight's kind of fuzzy and he wants to know if there's a problem. And Morpheus tries to tell him that the reason his eyes are fuzzy or whatever is that he's never used them before because he's always been receiving visual and other stimulus through the Matrix. And so now he's finally using his real eyes. So I think the problem is we don't use our astral vision capabilities. And so there's times when we project, especially I think in a low energy state. And so it takes a little while. We have to get a little bit of distance and put some will into kicking that astral vision back into gear. Elderberry Sprout asked, she said she loved the video that she had watched. And she was asking me about, do I have an ethical code when it deals with my dealings with the astral? I guess in the past she's recognized that I mentioned the Star Trek Prime Directive, and she just wondered, what are some of the ins and outs of some of, my ethical theories when it comes to astral projection. I said, I generally try to adhere to the non-interference directive, and if you're not a Star Trek nerd, that's generally a topic that was used in the series where you don't interfere in other societies, particularly societies that are of a more primitive or less technological attainment. Because if you interfere in their society, then you might interfere with whatever their normal development would be. And that's generally my fallback, my default position. Now, I did interfere quite a bit when I found my tribe starving about 12,000 years in the future. And I might have just remained an observer, but as a father of a daughter, I saw a little girl and she was suffering. And I can't stand that. I cannot just stand by and watch something like that. So I had to find a way to help them with food and advice. And before you know it, I was very much involved. But generally, when I'm traveling on the astral, I try to respect people's privacy because I like my privacy to be respected. So, I don't consider myself really a Christian any longer, but many of those philosophical theories that I grew up with, treating others like you like to be treated, I think are perfectly good guideposts. At least I believe they are. This is an interesting question I get from time to time. Chris Catone, and I apologize, Chris, if I didn't pronounce that right. He says, "Hey, Rick, I really enjoy your videos and value your expertise. As someone who has never astral projected, I think your videos are a perfect way for me to learn more about the subject. If I recall correctly, you mentioned in a video that your wife saw you as smoke in front of a television set while she was watching a very important and crucial episode on a soap opera. He asked, so is that possible? Can we be seen while we're astral projecting? Thanks a lot." My answer, generally, when you're in your astral body, you are in the astral realm. Physical eyes see physical things. Astral eyes see astral things. Although sometimes you can see things on lower vibrating levels of the astral and sometimes even the physical. But physical eyes generally only see physical things. Although obviously ghost stories tell us that there are exceptions. Now, in this particular instance, though, I purposely planned to be seen by her. So what I did was, I knew she was watching this very crucial scene, and I saw her before I went into the bedroom, and her eyes were glued. She was in an altered state, number one. I laid down and I immediately went into a vibrational state and I projected. And the way I did it was, it's hard to explain. I wanted to make sure that I was only a hair above the physical plane in vibration. So I made sure I thought physical thoughts at the same time, but not so physical that I'd be pulled back in, if that makes a sense. So I was extremely close to the physical plane. Then, when I went out and I stood in front of her, I stood between her and the TV, I sucked in all of the physical energy I could. And what that did is it did a couple of things for me. First of all, it lowered my vibrational rate even more, and I started taking on some substance. Some of it was most probably dust particles, things like that. I attracted them to me in a quasi-physical way. So what she saw was this smoky substance between her and the TV. And she even missed a crucial scene, which she was not happy about. In addition, when I went back to my body, and I said, "Hey, did you see me?" She was shivering too, because not only had she missed the scene, but she was cold because when I drew in that energy, I actually was pulling in heat energy as well, which may explain why people find cold spots in quote unquote haunted houses. So this was a time where I could be seen. But you see, there was a lot that went into this process. This is something which ordinarily would not be easily possible. And it's probably a good thing because think about it. While you're driving down the street, when you're on the highway, do you really want ghostly people walking across the streets where you have to constantly decide whether you should hit the brakes or not? That could be a big annoyance, to say the least. Now, Chris Catone asked an interesting follow-up question. He said, so if a physical person was vibrating at a higher frequency, and I mean really high, could he possibly see somebody on a regular basis vibrating in a very low physical way? I believe that is possible. However, I also believe there probably aren't more than 100 people on Earth who have been able to achieve that level of ability that they could consciously, on a regular basis, vibrate so highly within their physical body that they could see people in the lower astral easily. I mean, we're talking like Dalai Lama kind of folks here. So it would be extremely rare. Nicolor asks, hello, Rick. Thank you for your videos. I have a question. What do you think it's better to do before you sleep? Should you say affirmations that induce lucid dreaming, or is it better to do affirmations concerning astral projecting? I would say, look, experiment with both. We talked about how astral projection affirmations as you fall asleep will help you project. We also talked about how lucid dreaming, you can use that as a vehicle to astral project in a prior video. So experiment with both. I know some people who astral project almost exclusively from lucid dreams. Others who rarely, if ever, lucid dream, but astral project just using other techniques and things like affirmations. So once again, your mileage may vary. So, experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. And one thing I just want to make sure that I remind people is in your search to astral project, you're reading books, you're watching videos like this one, you're thinking about it, you're doing these affirmations as you fall asleep. Make sure you don't become so obsessed with this topic that it stops becoming fun and starts becoming a chore. If it starts becoming a chore, stop for several weeks. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a vacation. There are many things that we do in this physical life that are a chore. We have to do them because we have obligations that we must fulfill. Astral projection is not one of those obligations. It should be something that is fun. So don't be afraid to give yourself a vacation from time to time so that you can go back to it like you go back from a vacation, renewed, regenerated, so that you can take a fresh shot at your astral projection capabilities. Millis Nuages makes a comment. I have to admit, it makes me smile. You never miss a chance to mention your daughter's profession. Such a proud father. LOL. Yes, my daughter is a physician's assistant, and I happen to mention it from time to time. Guilty as charged. Breadman. Thanks for this, Rick. I've been absent, but now I'm back. Lucid dreaming is an amazingly easy way to reach astral projection. In my teens, I used lucid dreaming to achieve projection. It worked flawlessly. Highly recommended. Welcome back, Breadman. I think the last question we're going to handle for this episode, I'm going to say is anonymous. My father died about 7 months ago. At this point, what do you think most likely happened to his soul? He never really believed in an afterlife, and I'm a little scared of contacting him. I don't know where I will end up, but he was a good person, but he was a non-believer. I guess by that, non-religious, non-Christian, non-whatever, probably non-Christian, Judaic type belief system. This brings up another question. Where do rapists, serial killers end up when they die? Is there a heaven and hell like the Bible is telling us? These are some very powerful and fundamental questions that humans have been asking for thousands of years and probably been asking since we've had the consciousness and the awareness to wonder about what happens after physical death. I'm afraid I don't have 100% certainty when answering questions like this. Based on my limited experiences, I believe there is consciousness after physical death because what is the astral body but consciousness apart from the physical body? I personally have not witnessed any eternal hell or heaven that some religions teach in my thousands of astral projections. And let me say that as I was raised as a Christian, I read the Bible through several times myself. And hell is not referenced in any, there's some passing references, but all of this hell lore, if you will, seems to have been developed mostly in the Middle Ages. And it was developed by the Roman Catholic Church as a way, I believe, to control their parishioners. Because if you weren't good, if you didn't obey your church leaders, if you didn't donate the money and the land that they wanted, well, yes, your local baron could have you beheaded, but St. Peter and his church, held the keys to the afterlife. So getting beheaded is nothing, hanging is nothing. How'd you like to burn forever in some sort of eternal fire? Logically, first of all, I reject the simplicity of both extremes. It doesn't make sense to me. Why would a loving father punish even the worst offender with everlasting torture? First of all, what's the point? Punishment only has meaning when it is in relation to the crime. Okay? Someone who is a mass murderer should not have the same punishment, logically, in any kind of moral world that I would like to be a member of, should not be treated the same as someone who stole a loaf of bread. Yes, they both have sinned, quote unquote. But to condemn them to the very same eternal torment is ludicrous. There would be no justice in that universe. And what type of supreme being with supreme knowledge would think that there was? If we humans can see that it's necessary to punish people for different crimes, then why would some supreme being with supreme knowledge just decide, everybody goes into the one place, it's just easy and I don't have to worry about it? Come on, that just doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, then, where's the lessons? I mean, part of a punishment, certainly as someone who was and who is a father of a lovely daughter, punishment is meant to correct. If punishment is eternal, then there's no chance to demonstrate that the correction, the improved behavior, has occurred. Eternal torment is constructive, it's destructive in the extreme. It makes no sense. There's no purpose to it. Only someone who enjoyed watching others experience pain and terror, some sadist, would gain anything from such an experience. And why would an all-knowing supreme being who created this wonderful universe be a sadist? That wouldn't make any sense. What does make sense is that humans created hell because it was useful to control people here on the physical. Now, his father is probably somewhere on the astral plane reviewing the lessons he learned in this lifetime. I've witnessed that in the past. Generally, for someone who's an experienced astral projector, it is possible to contact those who have newly passed over, usually within the first few weeks or so, because they're very close to the physical plane at that point, and it's still possible to do that if you're experienced. However, as time goes by, they progress onto different levels of the astral. They go where they feel comfortable to review their past experiences and either determine to go back into the physical at some point or to progress in another way. perhaps another planet, perhaps another physical form, or perhaps a form on a different plane. It's impossible to say for sure. However, I see no reason for fear here, because I do not believe that fear would be any sort of a logical reason or emotion when we're talking about a very natural process, a process that really is in essence, a logical progression where we go from one state of energy to another, from one learning experience to yet another. Okay, well, that is today's Q&E, or Q&A rather. I have a lot more questions here, but I think 30 minutes is about long enough for this video. If you liked it, please like it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you have subscribed, why don't you go back and hit that bell button and make sure you get notification of all my videos. If you have any questions or comments, please put those in the comment area. I read all of them, I answer them, and I may use them in a video in the future. So thank you very much, and as always, I will see you on the astral plane.